Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. When I, 30 male, was marrying my wife, Clara, 29 female, 2 years ago, her mother was one of the most successful businesswomen I had come across in my life. She was a divorcee. She was already running a small business and she used the alimony from her divorce to expand her business. She then ran her company to losses only to emerge back stronger. Being an entrepreneur, I was very excited to meet her. But after a few conversations, I understood that she was least interested in business. Whenever I deflected the conversation to something remotely related to running a business, she would lose interest. She had a reliable team behind her who ran the business. I understood that as long as the owner doesn't do anything overall stupid, a business would run just smoothly if it's well established. During the time of our marriage, my mother-in-law was dating a man much younger than her. She had entrusted him with her business as well. Both Clara and I felt there was something off about this man. My mother-in-law barely gave any attention to her business, and finally, a few months back, this guy ran her to bankruptcy. The fall of her business began with her losing major clients. When there was no potential for expansion, this guy tried to expand the business. This led to the business incurring more debt and finally shutting down. She even lost her home in the process. The most awful part of her story was that she still had trust in her boyfriend, but he ghosted her. Clara was devastated by her mother's situation, so we decided to invite her to our place. That's how she started living with us. She was mentally at the lowest phase of her life, so we decided to give her time and space to recover. But I was more realistic about my mother-in-law's condition than Clara. I knew for a fact that her business was a cash cow. If she had given it a bare minimum effort, her business would have survived. Clara, on the other hand, believed that her mother was manipulated by her ex-boyfriend into giving him the reins of her company. It was impossible to convince Clara about her mother's mistakes, so I didn't try. A month after my mother-in-law moved to our house, her situation improved drastically. That was a relief for Clara, but that also meant that my mother-in-law was slowly getting back to her old lifestyle. A group of her friends who never bothered to check on her while she was struggling now became a constant presence at our house. Clara was happy because my mother-in-law responded positively to their company, but I was worried. My mother-in-law needed a considerable amount of money to support her older lifestyle, but since she was now bankrupt, Clara had to provide for her. We started to notice her older spending habits when she began to order food regularly for her friends at our house. The reality of being broke might not have sunk inside her head. She continued playing rich with our cash. Then she started to go out. This woman, though broke AF, still preferred to go to the posh restaurants and clubs that she used to visit. I had to intervene at some point. I got the perfect opportunity to discuss this with Clara when she informed me that my mother-in-law had asked for money to join a new gym. I didn't mind spending money on her, but I was bothered by how ignorant she was about her situation. She was not treating me right as well. She never initiated any conversation with me, and even when I tried, she answered my questions without making eye contact. I was invisible to her. So all these factors forced me to decide on her future with us. My first plan was to have a conversation with my mother-in-law about the situation and then work out solutions with her. But when I thought about the amount of time and energy that should be invested to convince her of my points, I dropped the plan. It was during a discussion I had with Clara that she brought up the idea of employing my mother-in-law at my company. My first response was no. From my evaluation, I concluded that either my mother-in-law was successful out of sheer luck, or there was a time in her life she used to be passionate about business and making money. Now, her only interest was in finding diverse ways to waste money. I believe in teamwork. The people who worked under me were an agile group of young workers. Even one lazy worker could impact team morale. That was my first reason not to employ her. Apart from this, she was known to be bossy. There were a few instances in the past when she criticized me for the way I was running my business. I didn't want one of my workers to dictate to me ways to run the company, so I was scared that my mother-in-law would destroy the equilibrium of my workspace. But Clara was committed to her cause. She wanted to get her mother employed. It was logical from her side to think like that because a job at that point would help in my mother-in-law's economic recovery. After considering a lot of factors, I complied. Clara talked to her mother about this, and by the next week, her mother was employed in my company. Within a week, I understood that hiring my mother-in-law was not one of the best decisions of my life. She delegated almost all the tasks that I assigned her. She would always be away from her desk. In the morning, I used to take her to work, but on most evenings, she left early. I also found it difficult to command her around because I still had an element of respect toward her within me. But the most irksome character of her was not to let others do their work. She went from desk to talk nonstop with my staff. She knew her crowd well. Some of them would send her away saying they were busy, but others would keep her entertained. I could see how her presence was deteriorating our healthy work environment. But I was patient towards her until one day when she decided to cross all the boundaries. Before marriage, Clara and I had decided one thing. Though we were still confused about having a child of our own, we wished to adopt at least one child from some other part of the world. We wanted to then provide the baby with the best life possible. This was a personal project for us. The international adoption process could be crazy expensive, so we started saving money for this before our marriage. There were multiple reasons why we didn't want our parents to know about it until the final stage. Our decision would lead to fruitless discussions within the family about the pros and cons of adoption. We both had gone through them and were fairly sure about our decision, so we were going forward with the procedure secretly. Somehow, my mother-in-law came to know about our adoption plans. She might have overheard a conversation between me and Clara, or she might have seen some paperwork. How she came to know about it doesn't matter. The respectable move on her part would be to let us know that she heard about our plans. But instead, she used it as content for workplace gossip. Yesterday, I had some on-site meetings and came to work late. The meeting room is on the way to my cabin. I stopped by the meeting room when I heard some chatter and saw my mother-in-law with two of my other workers. My mother-in-law was sitting on the oval-shaped table, her back facing the door, so she couldn't see me. She was blocking the view of the other two people in the room. Either they couldn't see me or they were too engrossed in her story. I stayed there for almost 2 minutes without them noticing. I understood that my mother-in-law was telling them about our plans to adopt, but she made it her story by telling them how Clara had stolen her idea of international adoption. I didn't want to hear any further, and I made my presence known to them. The group disbanded immediately. My mother-in-law disrespected our privacy. This warranted some action from my side because this was not like the rest of her misdemeanors. I first called in one of the employees who was listening to her story. I asked him what he heard from her. From his account, I understood that she had narrated one batshit crazy story to them. In her story, I was infertile. My wife was devastated when she learned about it, so she reached her mother for advice. Upon her advice, we are now going forward with adopting a child. While we were preparing for domestic adoption, my wife was advised again by her, which made us switch to international adoption. I called the next employee and she confirmed that this was the story my mother-in-law narrated. I asked them to leave and call my mother-in-law in. I fired her immediately and asked her to pack her stuff and leave. But here's the crazy part. When I reached home, I understood that my wife already knew about the drama at the office. Instead of listening to my side of the story, she told me that it was unfair of me to just fire her mother. I asked Clara to listen to me first, which she did not. But I tried to make her understand how her mother openly talked about our plans for adoption. She was still defending her mother. She argues that if it was some other employee, I would have given them a warning instead of firing them after the first offense. The way she looks at it, I was waiting for a reason to fire her mother. But that's not true. Am I the a-hole for firing my mother-in-law from work after I heard her disclosing sensitive information about my marriage to her coworkers? I sat down for a chat with Clara a few hours later. That's when I learned that she had kept one thing hidden from me. She had talked to her mother at some point in the past about our plans to adopt. This was before marriage, during the initial stage of our discussions. My mother-in-law recently asked her what the current stage of our adoption process was. Clara just said that we were yet to decide on anything concrete. She didn't think it was important enough to inform me. I genuinely thought that we both gave it the same level of secrecy. So this is where my mother-in-law got the information from. Clara still feels firing her was a bit too much, even after I told her how her mother twisted the story. A week after the incident, my mother-in-law has taken things to another level. She has convinced people that she is starting a new company. She even stole one of my employees. But the irony lies in the fact that she still lives in my house rent-free. There's no chance that such a company exists. I was right. She made an imaginary company and hired people. I don't know what goes on in this woman's head, but not my problem anymore. 2 days ago, she took Clara's credit card and bought something very expensive. Clara had already made it clear to her that our policy was to spend money judiciously. 2 days back, when I came back from work, I noticed that she was gone. Clara asked her to leave after the credit card fiasco. I didn't ask any further questions about where she moved to or how she could support herself, because by now I have understood that my mother-in-law could survive anywhere. NTA, man, it's your company. You're the boss. If someone is ruining your business, kick them out. That's business 101. Whether they are friends or family doesn't matter. NTA, why is your wife acting all worked up? You did what was right. I think your mother-in-law has manipulated your wife to work on her side. Also, it's best not to mix business with family. It makes objective decision-making impossible. Hello, I'm female 60. My daughter, 34, is married to a Spaniard, male 35. He's from Spain, not Mexico. Together, they gave me the gift of 2 grandchildren, male 11 and daughter 9. They live in the USA but visit Spain and Europe frequently, about once or twice a year, usually staying at his parents' house. I wish I can be so lucky. I've only been to Europe once during my honeymoon. I am now a divorcee from her father. Currently, I'm visiting my daughter and her family for the Christmas holiday. I use my sister-in-law's computer to look something up online. I know I shouldn't have, but his laptop was right there on the coffee table and all I needed to do was a quick Google search. When I opened his computer, I was horrified to see my sister-in-law email open to find out that he and my daughter's family had booked a vacation to a nudist resort in France with my grandchildren. I dug a little further and clicked on the website of the resort to find that there are even children featured on there as well. I guess you can say all of the images were tastefully done because none of their privates were exposed in the images. And I know that Europe is more liberal when it comes to nudity, but I can't see my grandchildren being exposed in this way. I confronted my daughter about it, and she was upset that I snooped, which I admitted was wrong, but she was also arguing with me, saying that I had no right to tell her where she could take her kids on vacation. I simply tried to tell her how I was fine with her and her husband going to a place like that, though I wish I didn't know about it, but not the grandkids, and how it is inappropriate for the kids to go to such a place because they can be preyed upon. I also told her how I never paraded naked around her when she was growing up and asked why she thinks it's okay to be naked in front of the kids, especially my grandson. She told me how I was being overdramatic and how they let the kids play nude on the Spanish beaches for years with my sister-in-law's parents, thinking nothing of it, calling it holidaying European style. She also informed me it was how her husband grew up, and many families in Spain still let their kids play naked on the beach. I asked if my sister-in-law's parents were also naked when they went to the beach, and she said yes. And again, I was horrified. She told me this is why she never told me, because she knew how I would react. I told her I understood they enjoy going to Europe to see sister-in-law's family, but why can't she take a normal vacation when she goes? Then I started to tell her about the trip I took on my honeymoon, and she said tour groups are not the real Europe, that my sister-in-law is Spanish, he is European, and that I am going to have to respect the cultural differences and in how they are raising my grandchildren. AITA? Let me count the ways. YTA for using someone's computer without permission. YTA for snooping around on said computer. YTA for sticking your nose in where it doesn't belong. YTA for thinking you have any say in how your daughter raises her children. YTA for your prudish, closed-minded approach to cultures different from yours. YTA for asking, why can't she take a normal vacation? When what you really mean is, why can't she take a vacation that wouldn't upset my fragile sensibilities? And while referring to your son-in-law as a Spaniard doesn't automatically make you TA, it's definitely not a good look in this era. Combined with everything else you've revealed here, I'd call it the icing on the cake. Sorry, Grandma, YTA. The world is a different place now than what it was. First, you are trying to override someone else's culture with your own. Second, they have already done this numerous times because this is how it's done in their culture. Lastly, they are not your kids. You do not have a say in how mom and dad raise their kids. Sorry, that's just how it goes. I'm 23, female. My sister, 27, got married a month ago and the wedding was beautiful and clearly very costly. They had a registry, but almost everything was really expensive. Think Dyson purifier, Fornacetti candles, etc. She also had a Tiffany alphabet necklace on it. I wear the same necklace which my husband gifted to me for our wedding last year. I didn't ask for anything and I know he saved up. Tiffany jewelry is absolutely not the regular standard for us. There was an option to give a monetary gift towards the honeymoon, so we ended up gifting $150, and I think it was more than fair. Sister brought up that she noticed I only gave a small contribution to the honeymoon. I said, yes, that's the gift. She replied she expected family to be more generous and the other siblings, relatives got thoughtful gifts. I could have at least gotten the Tiffany necklace since we can afford it. I told her, no, we can't afford it. And we gave what we could give. It's not my fault everything on the registry was so expensive. This was at Thanksgiving, by the way. There were other people around and I guess they could see the conversation between us was getting heated. My sister said I need to stop acting so self-righteous and they can put whatever they want on their registry. And others did get the gifts, so it's just me being cheap. My stepmom overheard and said I could have given a larger monetary amount or split the cost of the necklace with someone else, and I didn't appreciate the effort put into the wedding. I didn't think I was in the wrong here, Reddit, but I'm kind of doubting myself. I guess I could have given more money considering this is family. AITA? ETA. A lot of comments asking what my sister gave for my wedding. I replied to a few, but we'll edit it here. We asked for no gifts and to donate to the American Heart Association or donate toys for a children's hospital instead. NTA. A gift is just that, something presented to the recipient and not an obligation. The cost of the wedding is irrelevant. A wedding is not a money-making venture. Since she thinks you under-gifted, is she going to provide refunds to people who gave more generously than average? Since in her eyes, it's some sort of balance sheet. Also, it's just plain tacky to confront someone to demand a larger contribution and the jewelry off of your neck. Stepmom needs to back off too. Not her business either, but it's obvious where the greed comes from. It's also very, very low class to essentially attempt to browbeat you about it at the holiday dinner. Did they charge everyone an entry charge for that too, to cover the cost of turkey and cranberries? Most weddings I have been to try to have a variety of price ranges for gifts. I got one friend a cutting board for $35. Another, I got them a Yeti growler for under $100. All from their registry. Others even put out just a house fund ask, but said please come even if you can't contribute. It's your sister's choice to pick things she wants, but $160 isn't chump change for many of us who are trying to get by. She sounds extremely selfish and greedy, even more so to call you out on it at Thanksgiving.